Good morning. It is 10:14, December 26th. It's Friday morning, and I hope everyone had a good Christmas. I am up early this morning. Actually, I've been up for quite a while, and I'm just kind of cleaning up my room a little bit and, reviewing some of my thoughts. Now, I know I talk about this issue a lot, but like I said, it's left, I feel very disturbed by it, and it's because of the long period of time that it lasted, me talking about these issues for the 10-year duration, as well as me making statements directly to members of the kids of 533, letting them know I wanted nothing to do with them, but yet they were insisting on, being a part of my life. And this is something that I resented because I don't think that people took me seriously at first. Okay, at this point, I'm beyond disturbed at these people creating problems, with things like my rent. This is an orchestrated problem that they are 100% responsible for. I do get the intuitive message that many of these people committed suicide because of their inability to manage, I guess, what they had going, or was some sort of Ponzi scheme, something that was not built on foundations, and that they ended up deceiving a lot of people. I also do believe that the transaction relating to Valley Strong Credit Union, as well as my son having problems with his bank or whatever, is directly related to the fraud that Rashawn Gordon, as well as I'm getting, Jim Culligan. Now, these two individuals were, you know, they're okay. They're different individuals. Okay, Rashawn would be the second child of the 533. He would be, well, at one time I thought and looked at him as my brother. Jim Culligan is Tanya's, which is my oldest sister, my former oldest sister. That is her husband. Now, they didn't have a whole lot in common, Rashawn and Jim. As a matter of fact, Rashawn talked poorly about Jim every chance he got. Like, when Tanya first brought him around, just like same thing with Bruce, he talked negative about him. He didn't like him. But like I said, when it comes to Rashawn and his means of survival, trying to manipulate things, he collaborated with Jim, he collaborated with Bruce, and this particular connection with all these people makes no sense. The only thing that Rashawn and Jim Culligan have in common is the fact that they are incapable of taking care of themselves, okay? And the reason why I say this is because I do believe that somehow or another they were trying to manipulate my son in making it so that my son was through peonage, maybe either through employment peonage, which is illegal, where they create some sort of debt to where my son doesn't get paid directly and it ends up going to them. That's illegal, okay? You're not supposed to have pay over your paycheck to anybody else. Or they are manning my son's bank account to where my son's making deposits and somehow or another they're withdrawing the money. They are doing so illegally because there is no authorized person on the account. So, what happened with that fraudulent check that was deposited into my account? Who's to say this was orchestrated between this Eagle Bend company, as well as I do believe it's a part of a large network, okay? Whatever they found at, doing their audit with Valley Strong Credit Union, I'm going to let it go, okay? But do I believe all of these people are involved in this illegal operation? Absolutely. And what made it so that they convinced people to help them is because they used religion, okay? Religion is not an excuse to have access to people's bank accounts, financial institutions, credit cards, or anything, okay? So, like I said, I did talk about me proving this issue about so called educated people and the problems that they cause, okay? If you are truly educated, you will not rely on religion, okay, to run anything other than a religious institution that you belong to. Okay, now some companies, for example, like maybe Adventist Health, that's a hospital or medical facility, and I'm not sure if they require everyone to be a Seventh-day Adventist or whatever religion is, which I believe they might be run by Seventh-day Adventists. That could very well be the reason why they call themselves that, okay? And if they were requiring everybody to be Seventh-day Adventist at that organization, they have the right to do so. And you know why? Because it is under a specific religious doctrine, and people should know that this is run by them. They probably want to stand by the sort of morals that this specific religion adheres to. And that would include things like acknowledging the Sabbath. Okay. Now, like I said, they would have the right to specifically request you to have a specific religion because it's an organization that is supposed to define that as well as represent that, right? So that makes sense, okay? But when I'm talking about, like, I'm going to work at places like Flourishing Art, okay? Flourishing Art was not supposed to be anything religious, okay? But yet I was getting bullied about religious issues. I know that this particular group Rashawn was associated with, as well as Jim Culligan, was a made up um, cult, okay? And I already know the hypocrisy in it, okay? Because I know growing up in the 1980s when Tanya first met Jim Culligan was a former Catholic, okay? And there was like this born again Christian movement that was very popular, I would say, like in the late 70s and early 80s, okay? And a lot of these people were nothing more than like burnt out hippies or rejects in some way, like, wayward people that, the church would, take pity on. And then they were always acting as if their lives were so revived and things were so much better for them. But I do believe that, based on what the story of Tanya, and Jim, original church members, okay, what they did was they stole their money and they moved to England, okay? So they stole from their congregation. I do believe that Jim has never really seen any sort of positive, religious type of examples. I do believe that he is somebody who has been abusing people using religion his entire life. Also, what I find funny is that I mentioned that he was formerly brought up as a Catholic, okay? And he talked very badly about Catholics. He talked poorly about Jehovah's Witnesses when I was younger. As a matter of fact, he and Tanya were the ones who were constantly complaining about me reading Watchtower Tract Society publications. Yet years later, somehow he merges forces with Bruce Collins to bully me out of my things. Okay, so all I'm saying is that these people are hypocritical. Anytime I see interfaith things kind of working and claiming to be a specific, for a specific purpose relating to religion, when there's multiple people, I immediately recognize it as a cult. And hopefully, now that I'm providing this education, you will as well. Okay, so yes, this is a cult. Okay, so this particular group, many people, there were many deaths that resulted from what Jim Culligan as well as Rashawn orchestrated. Now, I am mentioning Rashawn mainly in this newsletter. I don't even think I'm making reference to Jim Culligan. I'm trying to summarize everything that has happened up to this point. Okay. And up to this point is the issue relating to my rent, as well as what's been going on with our finances, is a direct result of the employment manipulation and the collaboration of people that I've known, whether that be, people like, store clerks, people that are familiar with me, okay? Your rental agencies, landlord, these people are all collaborated. It is a collaborated effort, and it is all illegal. Okay, so this is one of the reasons why there is so many clouds and all this other stuff. Okay, yes, the weather does play a role in it, but I am getting these intuitive messages that this ended in tragedy. Okay, and the reason why is because people did things that they were not supposed to do. And sadly about it is that a lot of the people that Jim and Rashawn were relying on for information, they were relying on these 4-year graduate people to give them clues on how to handle this situation. How can we get a grasp on it? And a lot of these people were like, okay, well then, you could possibly, somebody, suggested this idea of the, employment manipulation, also the peonage setup that my son is experiencing. All of this stuff was the idea of people who claim to be educated when all of these things are illegal. Okay, it is illegal. So right now, this is where I'm at. I need to figure out what I'm going to do. I need to be able to make money. And at this point, I have to keep my options open. I'm not taking any accountability for what these people did. And what the problem with these people is that, they in their mind look at, like Rashawn, I was doing some like meditation on Rashawn, where I was trying to figure out what in the world made you think, okay, Rashawn, was nothing more than my brother. He hold, and this goes for Jim Culligan too. They hold no official title. They're not a mayor. They're not a senator. They're nobody. They're not even a formal member of a congregation. Okay, so what they were trying to do was, the message I'm getting at is that they were impressed with me being able to wake up the Soul Tribe to their past lives and me revealing the underground crime syndicate. So they realized that I had value, okay? And I believe that they knew I had value already. This is one of the reasons why they were trying to prevent me from working. What Rashawn was jealous of was the fact that I was able to buy things and support myself. And this was something that he highly resented. He also wanted to make it seem as though, you know, the less that you had, the more holy that made you seem, okay? And the reason why people adapt to these sort of religious beliefs is because they feel as though they are failures. They are not able to take care of themselves. It makes them try to feel better for what they do not have, okay? And so I am angry that this whole issue was not started for any other reason other than this one-sided competition that I would have never asked for. Now, in his mind, as well as Lisa Hughes, which would be my other sibling, my former sibling, okay, they look at what you personally do in your life, your personal choices, as a form of competition. Even though I'm not the one who sits there and monitors their actions, I don't sit here and compare myself to what they do, other than me understanding that when I would be experience time with them, I knew that I didn't enjoy that sort of time. I would prefer time to myself because I'm more comfortable doing the things that I like to do. Okay, I've never sat here and put any sort of thing in place to try to one up her or anything. As a matter of fact, I recognize that at the age of 18 years old, I'm an adult and I chose to live my life on my own. Okay, so this this whole issue, okay, I am a victim of organized crime, okay, that they convinced people like the mayor to participate in this whole Eric Arias issue. I do believe that he was, yes, the message I'm getting is yes, and his reason for participating in it is because of these people realizing that I really am worth something. These people recognize me or acknowledge me or believe me to be somebody who is, like, you know, has a lot of attention or whatever, okay? And so because of that reason, which is not a valid reason to abuse a person, Eric Arias decided to participate in this, okay? Now, see, what they were trying to do also is they were trying to block Gordon's occupational engineering from getting customers until I submitted to specific rules that were set forth by Jim Culligan as well as Rashawn Gordon, who are not in any way responsible for the production or the promotion of my company, this Gordon's Occupational Engineering, which I say is a very flexible type of entity, meaning like I could work as a 1099 employee or 1099 contractor, or I would get hired to work. I am just basically somebody who is advertising my skills and trying to not rely on things like Indeed.com, which I do recognize as a gateway, okay, and a promoter of things like human trafficking, okay. And this is why I'm talking about why I suggest job boards start understanding that this needs to get fixed. Okay, job shipping. I believe that employers should sign an affidavit confirming that yes, these jobs that they are posting in these job boards are indeed legitimate. Okay, because if they're not, all they're doing is, number one, baiting you or somehow trying to set you up for some sort of harassment. There is absolutely no reason whatsoever why anyone should post a fake job ad. Okay, it is causing problems when it relates to human trafficking. And of course, what I'm saying right now, I've said it several times. It is just that I wake up dealing with trauma. I wake up, the minute I wake up, I'm faced with trauma. I'm shocked that, number one, I was put in this situation illegally against my will. No matter how much I had already educated these people, they were determined to try to be attaching themselves to me. And a lot of this has to do with them dehumanizing me as a person just because I was adopted. Yes, I was adopted, okay? And yes, I was what they call a burden baby, a cabbage patch reset, whatever, a clone. Okay, I'm a clone, okay? But that in no way makes it so that I'm somebody who's supposed to, number one, ask for permission that relates to my family. Okay. And especially now, okay, now that I know that these people were a setup, that I was adopted, it is even more inappropriate for them to have anything to do with me. The intuitive message that's coming to my mind is that humbled souls know they deserve to die and they are peacefully parting. And so what I'm getting is that the message I was getting is that these people who realized, okay, there must have been some sort of video that I had posted, okay, proving my point, okay, illustrating the fact that yes, I'm adopted, so why would you insist on trying to exploit me? And this is why these people felt pressed to the wall, because when they really are confronted with this, they have to admit that yes, they were trying to abuse me. Yes, they were trying to financially exploit me. Yes, they've been doing this year after year after they were fully aware of what they were doing, and they had nothing else to say. They could not come up with an excuse other than they had to admit that they were guilty. So some of these people, a lot of these people, ended up committing suicide. And like I said, I cannot shed a tear for these people because they deserve it. Okay. I have been working in accounting for over 25 years. I do know that a lot of people, when it comes to this kind of cult mentality, they look at your career or jobs in general as a form of some sort of social type punishment. Okay. If I was doing something illegal or doing something wrong, that would be an issue related, that would be a issue specifically for law enforcement. That means if I was murdering, if I was stealing, if I was doing something that was against the law. I am not doing anything against the law. The problem with it is that these people who are making up their rules, this is where it gets delusional, okay? They felt as though I was, should be penalized because I don't want to listen to them. Okay. I have no reason to listen to them. They are not in a position of authority. The intuitive message I'm getting right now is that something about Monday Merriment. They were trying to rip me from promoting my projects. Like they wanted to have some sort of say in Gordon's occupational engineering. And they also wanted to have, well, Gordon's occupational engineering would not be considered a part of Monday Merriment. Okay, Monday Merriment is more of like my spiritual type talk. I talk about spiritual things, mystical things, whatever, okay? But the reason why I did make Monday Merriment, right, is because it was supposed to encourage people, and encourage people to be able to deal with the work week, okay? That I am very angry that they wanted to put their 2 cents into my stuff in the first place. I never asked for them to be a part of it. Okay, so they had no right to say anything or, give us opinion or try to limit my abilities to do anything. And where we have people like Alita, okay, some people, employers, they have this belief that because they are employing you, that they own you. Okay, and see, this is one of the reasons why employment law was created. Okay, because many people would abuse their employees, and this is one of the reasons why I'm talking about labor law. Okay, it is labor law that is supposed to dictate how things are supposed to go in the state of California. And each state has their own specific laws. Okay, um, in when you're running a business, depending on how many employees that you do have, okay, and then also the fact that we live here in California, we are under California labor laws. We also have to acknowledge things like the federal law as well. When it comes to federal as well as state law, I am completely in line with that. These people have violated the law, okay, and so even though they have done this, sadly I'm the one who is suffering for it. It's wrong. Okay, so I am tired of dealing with it. And I'm going to make this very clear. I would never join forces with anyone from the kids of 533. They don't have any sort of property rights to Swan Song Manifesto newsletter, or I would say Swan Song Manifesto would be anything that encompasses the newsletter, things like Monday Merriment, and yeah, those two things, okay, as well as my lessons. Like I know that I did some lessons like divination lessons, and the card creations that I make, that would all fall under that category of the Swan Song Manifesto, okay? But anything that relates to like workplace education, all of that is Gordon's occupational engineering, okay? And it's kind of funny because Gordon's occupational engineering and the Swan Song Manifesto, when it comes to Monday Merriment, I guess they could be looked at one and the same, or just some sort of creative thing, you know. And when it comes to spirituality, it can be incorporated into anybody's spiritual background. So, what I never, and I resent people trying to jump on the bandwagon. And when it came to my YouTube channel, none of that had anything to do with work at all. At all. Okay. But I know that there were certain Bakersfield employers that wanted to get their hands in it. Okay. Like I said, it is 100% mine. Okay. I've never signed over anything. Yes. Okay. When it comes to ownership of things, okay, I own these things. Okay. And what makes it so that I own them? I create them. And they were released under my YouTube channel, under my name. Okay. Now, to formalize this into like a business, like if I want to expand like a business entity and get like an EIN number, I could do so. Okay. And I would not have anything to do with religion. It would have nothing to do with religion. I would sign up, fill out an EIN number. I would get my EIN number. I would get a bank account under Gordon's Occupational Engineering or whatever. And no, I'm not required to have a husband or anything like that. So we have people making up rules. Okay. So when it comes to my creative stuff, these people had no right to do this. Okay, and do I believe that girl that came over to my house, with the one that looked like Mary Landucci or whatever? I believe that she was sent by, you know, the kids of 533 or whatever. You are 100% rejected by me. Okay, I want nothing to do with you. Okay, the message I'm getting right now is that many enemies killed themselves, and this is considered public shame. Why? Because, like I said, some of these people really thought they were on the right track. When it comes to, you know, forced marriages and stuff like this is something that I believe Jim Culligan as well as Rashawn relied on, because I don't believe that they had what it took to attract regular mates. Okay, so a lot of people use forced marriages in order to entrap women, to get, you know, to keep themselves financially afloat. Okay, and they would have no other way of getting, you know, having a spouse. Okay, so I don't know, you know, the inner working of what was going on between Melissa and Rashawn. I've never spent any additional time with them. I've only met Melissa a couple of times. Okay, but just by what I experienced myself, I can see that there are men like Rashawn and Jim who use marriage, right, as a way of survival. Okay, and it's this sort of stuff is that I have a problem with, because it violates rights. And like I said, even the Roman Catholic Church, okay, which we all know is extremely strict, you know, completely accepts people getting annulments if these sort of situations happen to them, because it's against human rights. Okay, it's against your right. Okay, and the law says so. The law of California, state law, says it's illegal to do this, forced marriages, as well as when we're talking about religion, even the Catholic Church, you know, endorses getting an annulment. And it really, you don't even need an annulment, a formal annulment, because let's just say, for example, this girl was sent as some sort of kingdom spouse. There was no formal. Here in California, you have to have a marriage license. Okay, signed by two people and witnessed by somebody who is authorized to facilitate the marriage. Okay, so I'm dealing with a lot of ignorance. Okay, and I would never accept her as any part of my family. Now, there's this girl on I see on Instagram. I think she's so adorable. Like if I was, and I would never choose someone's marriage mate. Why? Because it to me, I agree with the Roman Catholic Church. You know why? Because it's against your right. Okay, and I understand when people, what happens to relationships when people think it's okay to manipulate things behind the scenes. Okay, now I do believe that Jim, my father, James Calvin Gordon, as well as Mary Gordon, were dealing with social pressure when it came to their relationship. Okay, so here we have two incompatible people being pressured to get together and get married. Okay, and there's a lot of resentment, and that trickles down to the kids, and sometimes it trickles down in forms of either ignoring the kid or physically abusing the kid, either psychologically or physically or whatever. Okay, you know, if people want to get married, that is their choice. I've never said that I'm against people who get married the correct way. Okay, but I am against these sort of forced marriages because they're illegal. Okay, and no, you know, I don't expect to get married in my life. Why? Because I'm somebody who is very, very careful. Some people might wonder, well, what's going on with you and Vladimir Putin? Yes, I think Vladimir Putin is really cool. I really like him. I want to get to know him. I want us to get to know each other, spend time together, and talk to each other, okay? But you also have to understand, I've been on my own for many years, as well as Vladimir Putin. So we want to make better choices. We have the right to make those choices, okay? Some people just get married willy nilly, whatever, that kind of stuff. It's important that people make better decisions. Okay, and I have the right to sit here and make those decisions as well as him. Okay, so stay out of people's business. Okay, and I'm saying this because I would grant everyone else the same sort of courtesy. Okay, why? Because I don't ever want to make people put people in bad situations. So when it comes to people saying, "Oh, Maria is against this," I have very strong family values, but I understand these sort of long-term decisions should be made with great decisions. Okay, so the message I'm getting right now is that many of these enemies killed themselves because they knew that they were in the wrong. Some of these people were, like I said, people who thought that they were educated. They are not educated. They were highly indoctrinated by people like Rashawn. Okay, and the sad part about Rashawn as well as Jim Culligan, okay? Both of these men, like Rashawn, I can't say anything about Melissa because I don't know Melissa. Okay, I don't know her. I don't even know what she did for a living. Okay, but I know that Tanya, she was somebody who got her master's degree. Okay, and I do believe that people like Jim, men who may not have the same sort of what do you call it? Maybe Jim wasn't as educated as Tanya. He relied on Tanya to support him. Okay, that to me is very sad and it's wrong. And so they wanted to put me in a similar situation when in fact, I'm not going to do that unless, of course, it's consensual. So these people should be, if and like I said, I do get the intuitive message. Many of these people took themselves out. They should, and if not, they should be in jail. Okay, the message I'm getting right now is that people have my political views and they want me to be in a position of authority. And, I myself have always shied away from that sort of stuff because, like I said, I understand that I have the right to believe what I want to believe. Okay. And I never wanted to make any waves. And I was somebody who lived in this community and never bothered anybody. Okay. But that did not stop Rashawn and Jim Culligan from convincing a lot of people to try to bother me and affect my life. So you can understand where I'm coming from. I didn't do anything to deserve this. Okay. And yet, what I'm saying is, I've never been somebody who felt it necessary for me to just discuss my political views. Why? Because I figured, I believe in live and let live. Okay. And I believe as long as you're acting or living within the guidelines of the law, right? Like you're not breaking my windows, and you're not disrespecting my stuff. You're not creating problems for me, then I'm fine with it. But obviously, people created problems for me, okay, without my knowledge, like people doing things covertly that I had to figure out throughout the course of time, and I am completely traumatized by it, completely traumatized, and the fact that these people put me in this situation and then they act as if, oh, well, they try to make excuses for it. There is no excuse for it, okay? This situation is all their fault, all of it. So I'm not taking responsibility for any of it at all, okay? Because this is all orchestrated by them, and everybody who participated that was a part of it, they know it. So when they sit there and try to bully me after putting me in this situation, all I can do is look at them like, I know you're a criminal, and I know that the people at the credit union was a part of it, and everyone else was a part of it. So I'm not going to sit here and feel pressured, or I'm not going to sit here and I'm not going to let these people try to make me feel bad for what they did. Okay. So for the people who ended up committing suicide and ended up dying in this situation, you did the right thing. You know why? Because I'm not feeling any sympathy for these people. I'm not feeling any sympathy for these people at all. And I think it's understood why. Okay, so yes, when it comes to me promoting Gordon's occupational engineering is, I'm somebody who respects the guidelines of the law, okay, of the law of California, okay. I am not religious, okay, and I'm mindful of other people's religion, meaning like, I don't sit here and tell people what they're supposed to believe. I am there to work. I am here to work. I'm here to do a job. I'm not here to get involved with politics, religion, or anything else. Okay. It is what it is. Okay. And I resent, very immature people bringing this up. It really bothers me and it's affected me. Anyway, people do like my politics as well as my spiritual views. That's good. I'm glad. Apparently, this last attack that I dealt with had issues relating to number one, people were, the message I'm getting is that I was attacked because of my choice to smoke marijuana. I do know when I went to visit Lisa many years ago, slightly right after marijuana became legal. Okay, Jim Culligan was smoking marijuana at the house, and yet he's the same person is turning around trying to use marijuana against me. See, this is what I'm saying about these people. They're very hypocritical. Okay, they're very hypocritical. And yes, I'm somebody who does smoke marijuana. I smoke it for, what do you call it, medical reasons. Some people would ask, well, you don't have a medical card. I used to have a medical card, okay, but then they changed the rules. Anyone over 21 of the years old does not need to have a medical card to get it. They only use a medical card if you are like 18 years old. Okay, if you're 18 years old, then you will need a medical card here. And so, yes, I mean, I'm able to go in to purchase marijuana if I choose to do that. Okay, and I don't have to have a medical card. Okay, because I'm over the age of 21. Okay, you do have to have a medical card if you are 18 years old. Okay, and underneath 21. So, but I use marijuana at this point in my life specifically for the stress, and I also use it for stress as well as sleep. And I'll tell you that I do need it. Why? Because this has caused me severe problems. It has caused me severe psychological problems, depression, and everything else. Okay, so I have the right to talk about that. Okay. So yeah, so the number one, it was the issue of marijuana. Also, they didn't like the food that I ate. Now, see, the thing is that it to me is like, this is one of the reasons why I was not comfortable with whoever donated these canned goods to me, because I felt as though when my son brought them in, this is like a while ago, I kept thinking this seems very strange. At this point in my life, I am not comfortable with people doing anything that's going to disrupt any sort of everyday life living that I have. So the minute that they brought in, this was slightly after my son lost his job, I think at a place called Newsom or something like that they brought these canned goods over. And I kept thinking, okay, this has something to do with gang stalking. This has something to do. And see, what they want me to do is they want me to eat canned goods, okay? And like I said, I don't go to the medical facilities, okay? I don't go to doctors to cure myself or anything like that. If I feel like I'm ailing, I'm completely fine trying to heal myself. Why? Because I dealt with a medical issue with a doctor trying to insert something inside of me, or try to, he gave me a shot without my authorization. I also remember what happened to my father. So I would say about 15 years ago, I started making sure that I take care of myself through nutrition 100%. Okay, so I think what Jim Culligan was trying to do, or what this community was trying to do, was trying to force me into a lifestyle to accept foods that I would not eat. I don't eat canned goods. Now, sometimes I will throw a canned good in. For example, like casseroles and stuff. Everybody uses Campbell's soup to actually add flavor to like a casserole, or you might use some chicken broth or whatever. But that's my choice. Okay, so once again, we had a bunch of people who thought they could sit there and do this sort of stuff and then punish me publicly for what I chose to do. I have every right to choose what I want to eat. Okay, so once again, the message I'm getting right now is that many in my soul tribe are grateful that I explain the origins of the burden babies, and it helps to understand things um, that no one talks about. Okay. Yeah, this is it. This is basically people trying to bully me because they resent me. My brother Rashawn struggles financially as well as Jim does, okay? Because they do not have any sort of skill or any sort of ability. So because he was stuck with canned goods. He felt angry because I don't eat canned goods. I don't eat primarily canned goods, okay? And nor would I recommend doing that because they don't have nutritional value, okay? If that's all you eat is canned goods, processed foods and stuff like that, it's not good for you, okay? So Rashawn was doing this just because he was jealous. I'm not responsible for Rashawn's problems, okay? So once again, Rashawn deserved to die. Also, people are starting to look at this whole thing about the whole college thing. Now, I want to make it very clear about why I left, why I was bullied out of school growing up. Okay, looking back at this, I understand that it was the siblings, the kids of 533. Okay. It was the kids of 533 doing their little covert missions with other kids, doing what they could to fit in, to get liked by other kids. So these kids were encouraged to bully me. Also, I would say that Jim Colligan played a huge role in it. I know that when I was in high school, I had a teacher who went to their church, and I do know that there was a lot of focus on me. And why was there focus on me? I believe that Jim Culligan came into my life deliberately based on my bloodline. Okay, people, and I'm starting to look back now, is that Japanese foreign student that came to visit us at that time. These people were interested in me for my bloodline. And how did they learn about me? They learned about me through their churches or religious organizations. And why was this widespread? It is because of the CIA's involvement, okay, of bloodline targeting. Okay, now we all know that these CIA mind control programs were always described as illegal. So, how does this happen? Much like the workplace violations that go on today. Okay, people do not follow protocol, and people want to play games. They want to play jokes. They think it's interesting or fun to see, so they want to spread their word, right? So they use things like churches, other institutions, wherever they can use it. Okay, I remember meeting this one girl, and she said she went to a Mormon like gathering or whatever, and she always took an interest in me. Okay, I personally do believe that certain churches were encouraging people to meet me. Okay, and I do believe that Jim Culligan somehow or another came into our life through the same situation. Jeff Hughes as well. Okay, and both of these men were very well identified or closely associated with things like white supremacy. Okay, so now we're talking about these burden babies, right? That were, and now see, a lot of the messages that I get, like, okay, I want to know what exactly was said about me in the churches, okay? Now, I know that I had an issue with the LDS in Lancaster. Why? Because the LDS thought, or their individual members, okay, resented the fact that CB Berganza was somebody who was very stylish, very whatever, okay? And yet, I understand that there's Mormons within the fashion industry. So how does all this go? Okay, and I already talked about CV Berganza being known with somebody who had a lot of intelligence. He had a lot of strength, and people could acknowledge his anointing. So I dealt with a lot of jealousy and personal vendettas of people. Okay, so I was not under any sort of spiritual violation ever. Okay, so I dealt with bullying as CB Berganza to be continued as Maria Gordon. So I have dealt with injustices forever. Now, I know that a lot of so-called Christians will sit here and talk about, like, they'll talk about, this particular group was bullying me because of my clothes. Yet we have people who are famous designers who these people buy from, they advertise for. So like I said, this is a form of mind control. Okay, I always find it funny when like so-called Christian people sit here and talk about, how secular music is bad, and how, but most of these same people, these so-called Christians, right, are celebrities. These celebrities that were told not to talk to me are the ones who were a part of this sort of Christian cabal thing, right? So exactly what is it? How could these people be bad if they are Christian themselves? Makes you wonder, right? All of this doesn't make any sense because this is all a result of MK Ultra mind control. Okay, so nothing really makes any sense, and you see a lot of hypocritical people doing stuff. Okay, split mind, saying one thing and doing a completely different thing. And see, I know I've been studying these people for a long time, and I can actually say that the kids of 533, as well as Jim Culligan especially, as spelled him and Rashawn. Okay, these are great examples of the product of MK Ultra. Great examples, okay? And the very fact that these people believe these people, I will tell you, when it comes to people who are uneducated, Jim Culligan and Rashawn Gordon are like the prime examples of people. And like I said, I would describe Rashawn as borderline illiterate, okay? But when it comes to the power of persuasion, I know that if most cult leaders, okay, when they are trying to make an impact on people, they profile people very specifically. Okay, so if I wanted to get somebody to bully up on a nice looking person, who would I choose? Okay, I would go and I would try to convince mostly women who are considered to be low self esteem. I would attack. I would try to get them to help me. I would try to get a lot of overweight women to try to be a part of this. Why? Because they already don't like themselves and they already want to project their anger out on somebody. Okay. And so now you're dealing with people who they want to believe have authority so that they can justify their evil. That's what exactly what it is. So cult members know what they're doing. Cult people who are leaders in cults or whatever, they know exactly what they're doing. They may be illiterate, they may be ignorant, they may be uneducated, but on a psychological level, they do know how to manipulate and they know the kind of people to look for. Okay. So the message I'm getting right now, it is agreed that it is employment law that must be followed. Religion does not have a place in the workplace, unless, of course, specifically it is a religious institution, such as like Seventh-day Adventist or maybe like a Catholic charity organization. In this case, they're expecting you to be Catholic. You should be Catholic. And you should be aligning with the Catholic values. If you are a part of an organization that says that you are, you're associated with a religion, okay? But regular like employers and stuff like that, like you go to work at maybe a company that just a regular company, okay? They're not. There's no religion associated with that. And so when you see this sort of stuff that goes on in your organization, that needs to be. It's like it's a red flag. Okay, so also, a lot of people do acknowledge the fact that people believe in what people really do not know what they believe. They don't. They don't. And that is another part of the MK Ultra, mind control. I was actually going to be writing this in my newsletter and I decided to. I kept thinking I am focusing way too much on this whole issue of brainwashing. It is a complete downer, okay? I am disgusted by people like Rashawn. I'm disgusted by people like Jim Culligan. And I'm disgusted by people who do not have the intellectual ability to decipher between what is right and wrong, okay? Because they are highly problematic in society because they cause so much damage, okay? They cause entirely too much damage, okay? But when it comes to me, um, not feeling bad about what happened to these people, they had plenty of time to make up their mind. They had plenty of right chances to do the right thing. To them, it spiraled out of control because these people wanted to win a one-sided argument. The personal choices that I make in my life, I have every right to make. I have every right to make that. And I'm angry because of the abuse that I've endured. I'm angry at the abuse that my son has endured. And I have every right to feel this way. Okay. But I am doing some research and I don't know if I'm going to I'm probably either going to use it for a topic of maybe an educational video, but I also do believe heavily that these sort of programs, okay, through various means makes people hostile. Like people, I do believe that on an undercurrent level, like, the reason why people behave the way that they do and not fully aware of it is mainly because of things like MK Ultra, and it benefited them to not allow people to think for themselves. This was a part of their agenda. So going back to men being possessive of women, okay, like there are some men who talked about this under the guise of religion. You know what I mean? And it sounds like maybe these people just want good old fashioned values. People want a nice old fashioned family structure, and perhaps people think that this is the answer to the declining societal morals or whatever. If the people had good family structures, okay, I would say that that's true. Okay, people should have good family structures, okay, but they shouldn't be forced. Okay, because if you're going to have a forced family structure, guaranteed it's never going to be a stable place. This is why I'm talking about how it trickles down to spousal abuse, it trickles down to neglect, it trickles down to abuse to the kids. It's a very negative thing. So according to the state of California, as well as, and I'm very glad that the Roman Catholic Church agrees with this, when it comes to marriage partners, that has to be consensual. That has to be consensual. And so I'm talking about forced marriages and how they are not legitimate. Okay. So whoever this girl was, she don't mean anything to me and she never will. Okay. All right, I am going to go ahead and wrap up this video. I needed to release what I needed to say because it was in the back of my mind. And obviously, I am not comfortable of ever having to deal with something that I'm not responsible for. Okay. And like I said, I have been trying to like psychoanalyze, their specific reasons. Some of these reasons are like, for example, the marijuana thing. Marijuana is legal. And then the babyish part about it is that people can't take accountability. And the sick and twisted part that is highly alarming, okay, is that people think that because, like, for example, Vladimir Putin said something nice to me, they in turn feel as though they need or they're justified in harming me, okay? And what it really is means that when you're jealous of, in their mind, their twisted mind, if I'm jealous of you, that means I have the right to lash out on you. Okay, and apparently people like Karen Go were a part of this. So the reason why I'm mentioning this right here is that, it should be a no-brainer that just because you're envious of something or you want something is no legal reason to sit here and lash out on a person. Okay, so these people are in the wrong. Okay, and it's like, it shocks me that adults cannot take accountability for their own actions. So when it comes to these people who did this, okay, they got what they deserve. And hopefully that this sort of thing will never happen in a community again. Okay. And people need to understand how this formulates. And like I said, it formulates by one or people who have absolutely no official title whatsoever going to the top of the pyramid, talking to so-called important people like mayors, governors, law enforcement, convincing them, like they'll come off and say something like along the lines like, I'm concerned about my relative. She might be on a wayward track. She might be, doing something that she shouldn't be doing, or she's not, whatever. And then so that gets the participation of, people like, mayors or people who are considered important, and then they start violating employment laws. Okay, the message I'm getting right now is that something about everyone accepts the fact that beauty is of the divine. It is, okay? And so I feel as though that the fact that people were trying to bully me out of it is something I will never forgive. I will never forgive. Why? Because that is something that is directly associated with you. It is your number one. Okay, it is your number one signature as an identifier as to who you are. How dare somebody think that they have the right to tell another person how they're supposed to present themselves, especially when I look at myself as extremely modest. I'm always dressed, you don't see cleavage, you don't see anything like that. So it's just the fact that I have nice clothes. Well, I have every right to collect those nice clothes. And they had no right to touch my credit cards to try to prevent me from buying them. They also wanted to prevent me from having any money, right? But I have to have money because I have to take care of myself in my old age, right? So these people are in the wrong. No matter how you look at it, okay? No matter how, I will never take any responsibility for their immaturity as well as their secret desire to unleash genocide. The other message I have right now is something about I should be proud to be authentic. I am. You know why? Because if it wasn't for someone who stands out like me, understanding what was really went on in this community, this kind of stuff, and I know it runs rampant because I have read books and well, not books, but like magazines or articles, I should say, articles online about Kern County and their problem with human trafficking. Okay, and the reason why they have such a problem is because there's so much ignorance in this community. Okay, they honestly think that number one, it's supposed to be run by religion. Number two, the very fact that that employment poster about the California as well as the federal, to a lot of people, that's like revolutionary. They never heard anything like that. Because the first thing that they think of is I'm going to be a manager, I'm going to manage people, but I'm going to manage it based on what I'm going to call religion. That right there is the biggest mistake they ever made. Okay? And just proves that they're not educated. So is there something else I want to say before I wrap this up? Okay. So far what the message I'm getting right now is that so far what I've written in the volume 3 first quarter newsletter is indeed correct. Okay, this relates to the money laundering that was going on in my account. Okay, these people are 100% responsible. I am not going to be responsible for any of it. Okay, so whatever went on in this community, it needs to fix itself. Okay, and then I'm also, I wanted to address. I don't know who is in charge of this community right now. Okay, but we need some people who we need people who actually, you know what, like I said, when it comes to leadership, there needs to be better leadership. Okay, there just needs to be better leadership, because what happened, Karen Go is responsible for perpetuating human trafficking, and I'm going to hold her 100% responsible. She is responsible for anything, for all of it. Okay, because she was aware of it. She was on my Gordon's occupational engineering email blast, as well as other members of city council. Okay, and I'm not trying to make city council uncomfortable if there's any remaining members left. I'm just letting you know I'm not taking any responsibility for what you did. Okay, and like I said, why am I going to say you? Even though you didn't necessarily initiate it, I already made it very clear that Rashawn, Jim Culligan, members of 533, as well as anyone associated with them, were not to have anything to do with me. Period. Okay, and yet you did this and you let it happen, regardless of how many times I mentioned it on my videos, regardless of how many times I made it very clear in my communications through my videos when I sent them to you. Okay, if you are going to use the excuse of you not seeing this in your email, right, then I'm going to be uncomfortable with a member of city council, especially the mayor, that doesn't read the correspondence that the citizens or residents of here in Bakersfield respond to. That means that you're just sitting on your job and you're not doing it. Okay, so you ultimately are going to be held responsible for everything that happened. So going forward, if you're still here, okay, if you're still here, okay, and if you're not, then the people in the community need to understand the proper mode of conduct going forward. Okay, because this should not be accepted. Also, I do understand that my soul tribe is watching out. If the governor of California wants to step in and start manning this, then I would suggest you do something until somebody we find responsible leadership here in Bakersfield. Okay, because this isn't working. Okay, the message I'm getting right now is that I win. Everyone turned against the Collins and the ones and the people of 533. Like I said, when I say I win a competition that I didn't ask to play. Okay, and I do get this intuitive feeling that people like Lisa, as well as Rashawn, they did look at anything that you do as competition. Even though there's no way in the world that I would know what Rashawn does where he was living. He lived in Arizona. He also lived in Nevada from time to time. Okay, Lisa lives in Lancaster. I don't communicate with these people anymore, so I'm not sitting here keeping up with what they're doing. I don't keep up with any of the people that I used to know. Okay, I literally only mind my own business. Trust me, if I worked for you and I don't communicate with you anymore, it's because I wanted to get away from you, and having any sort of interaction with you caused me trauma. Okay, why would it cause me trauma? Because an employer, okay, actually put me in this situation. Okay, so me having any sort of interaction with people like Alita, Mary Landucci, or any of these sort of people would be an absolute no-no. Okay, I don't want to know these people. Okay, and there's no reason for me to want to know these people. So when I think about it, this is the 100% fault of the kids of 533, the Collins, and these employers, as well as the main thing is this sort of the reason why it went widespread is because people of the city council, especially Karen Go, was sleeping on the job. Period. Okay, so I'm not taking any responsibility for this. Okay, so I expect things to shape and mold around me to correct the problem because I'm tired of dealing with it. Okay, the message I'm getting right now is that I have proved that I am truly educated. Yes, I'm truly educated. Truly. Okay, and I don't need to sit here and brag about it. I don't need to tell other people about it. I'm more comfortable. I'm totally comfortable telling knock jokes that make absolutely no sense. I'm totally fine with it. Okay, I have been that person forever. I've walked around with this in my head for the longest time. Okay, and even though these people had seen examples of what is that I can do, and that obviously I'm somebody who is not what they really wanted to other people to believe. They knew it. They knew who I was. They knew I was intelligent. It's just they didn't want to accept it. They did not want to accept it because people like Rashawn was jealous of the fact that, I was able to buy things that were better than just canned goods. I'm tired of people thinking that everything I do is a competition. No, I'm simply trying to survive. I have zero interest in what goes on outside. I want nothing to do with it. Okay, I understand that most of these people are nothing more than mind controlled agents, walking time bombs. Okay, like I said, especially people, right? Especially people, okay, who have been brought up in these sort of environments. These are the kind of people that are literally walking time bombs, okay, ready to go off and unleash their unjustified anger on people. So don't get me, so you need to understand, I have zero interest in being a part of that. So I mind my own business. So nobody can sit here and say, "Oh, she did this, she did that." You're lying, okay? So clean up the community already. When it comes to, let me hang on a second. Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and make that right now. When it comes to Galvin Newsom, I'm sorry, I know your name, but I always have a hard time pronouncing it. I'm calling this out to you, okay? And it's weird. I'm sitting here looking at your picture, and it says Galvin Newsom, January 7th, 2019, as if it almost looks like they accidentally made it like that's what it's the year that you were born, and it has a dash, and it's just like as if you were born in 2019. We know that's not true, but you probably came into prominence at that time. Listen, what's going on here in Bakersfield is a freaking nightmare. As a matter of fact, I'm going to call this video and address it to you, Galvin Newsom. We don't have proper leadership here, and I think because you preside over the state of California, I would want you to know that, okay? And so I'm a victim of human trafficking, and I'm doing my best to educate people on the dangers of human trafficking through my educational videos. I may add you on my list. I'm hoping that I get participation in solving these issues because we do have problems here in the workplace and everywhere. But I'm trying to do my best here in California, starting off in California. I do want to promote my project, The Moral Reset, but let's take one step at a time if that could even happen. Right now, Bakersfield is a lawless community and it needs to be fixed. Okay, it is a lawless community. If I can play a role in it other than my videos, maybe I'll meet you one day. I don't know how that happens, but how that's going to work out. But I'm addressing you, Mr. Newsom, because number one, I'm going to trust that you're going to get the job done. In the meantime, Maria's going to wrap up this video and get on with the rest of my day. I will say, though, that Mr. Newsom, that our laws here in California are the best. Okay, so if people could just get it together and act within it, we would have such a great place. Okay, and it's constructed wonderfully. It's just not implemented, and that's a problem. I'm wrapping up this video. Take care. Bye bye.